funders, one for research performing organizations, and one for publishers in all 6 countries. And this will be published in the spring of 2013. They provided some background and context regarding the existing policies and strategies in those countries, as well as, we think, decent, good material for evidence-based policy making. And this, what we will do in the publication of those surveys is that we'll present our overall findings. We will report on each country separately, as well as have 2 sort of thematic reports. One that emerged was very interesting on copyright issues, and the other, the role of the libraries in all of this open access policy development thing. And I'm just giving you just a few things on the data on the participation. That was 221 research performing organizations in the 3 countries, with what I think is a good response rate. Publishers and funders, which is not a good response rate, and here we have a problem with the funders. We know that they lag behind in policy development regarding open access. So just the survey outcomes at a glance, as we mapped them, was that basically there is a few policymakers in those countries with open access policies, but they're generally not involved very much in the discourse on developing open access policies. That is before we approach them. And of course other centers of expertise have done. So obviously there needs to be more advocacy activities and actually coordinated advocacy activities towards them. The universities are doing very well with repositories, and some of them have voluntary policies, but these are not police. They don't keep tabs on their deposit rates or anything like that. So it's basically, if you would like to deposit your paper, please do it. It's very relaxed policies, the universities that do have policies. But they're doing very well on repositories. The publishers that participated were not, the rate as you saw was not very good, but they were mainly societies and other institutional presses. Mostly these are not private for-profit publishers, but rather publishers that are supported otherwise by institutions and or public funds. And those actually are a very good opportunity for the growth of open access, both gold as well as green, as we found out that they're very, very liberal regarding, in allowing actually authors to self-archive their work, and it actually providing their work to a large extent gratis, not open access. So a lot of work of systematizing and helping them can be done, we think. So more policy and advocacy work is necessary, and also, of course, these surveys will highlight and show very clearly that there is very different landscapes of open access and scholarly communication in these different countries, and of course, indeed, in Europe, which is why we need the coordinated policies. But it was an interesting and helpful exercise for the project. Another thing in the area of mapping that Paula will talk about is the Open Access Tracker, the tool that was developed by the project, and which you can see in our main web page, which collects and presents in one spot information regarding open access journals, repositories, as well as policies, but draws from acclaimed tools to present its data, and I will not say anything more. I will allow Paula to elaborate on that. And I'm just showing you a screenshot. There's graphs in it, and so here you can see Greece not doing very well on institutional policies. Only one institutional policies appears here from ROR map. Now moving on to the engagement part of our project work, the Policymaker engagement. What the project has done so far is to identify the key policymakers, and our main interest was the funders and the RPOs, the research performing organizations, although of course we also have included in our discussions the publishers. We have established solid contacts with key policymakers that we feel are the ones to move the agenda forward, such as, for instance, the funding organizations, the rectors' councils, specific rector research center councils, etc. And we have formed within the project national task forces of key stakeholders that can collectively in each country see that that developments happen in the policy implementation and coordination of local activities at the national level can also be facilitated. And what we've done, apart from the calling and emailing back and forth and all of that, in each country is that we have convened all these peoples in national workshops, 1 workshop per country, so 6 national workshops. And of course, this engagement is an ongoing process and will continue because you need to keep these stakeholders abreast of what we're doing at the project and more importantly what the European developments are and you know, what policy developments they should be informed about and taking into consideration in formulating their own policies regarding access to the research they fund or to their institutional research outputs. So what are some of the outcomes of this engagement with the policymakers? Is to enable the countries to move forward in national processes, taking into account their particular needs. And this is very important, as I said, we do see that the different countries work very, very differently. And it's sometimes, or many times, it's kind of hard to have one solution fits all. So you need to allow the local processes to develop with a facilitated way and in a way that you monitor how things happen, but let freedom there to address, so that needs are addressed, particular needs are addressed. We have facilitated information flow on open access developments, and in particular on policy developments, and we have done that all together as a consortium, and each of the partners for their own policymakers. We have managed to forge synergies between previously fragmented groups within each country and have helped maximize the impact of previously disconnected activities. And I think this is quite important, that when you have in a country, you know, some activities going on here, some there and some there, to be able to bring them all together. And sometimes they could even be competing ones, which doesn't make sense. I think I consider this to be on the whole a decent achievement of the project thus far. And so then bringing together in workshops the stakeholders and establishing where they do not exist or expanding communities that advocate for open access policies, and in some cases actually triggering developments. Not in all cases, in all countries, but in some this is the case. So I would like very briefly to walk you through some of the highlights of our varying ecosystems of scholarly communication and open access by pointing out a few highlights of the national workshops that took place this fall up until the end of January. I think the first ones to take place was the one in Miño and the one in Spain on the same day, and actually in collaboration, the 2 countries, which was very good. And we know that Portugal, as we have seen, and within the project we've observed, well, through prior knowledge, but also by our surveys, that is well more advanced, both in terms of repositories, the infrastructures, as well as in terms of open access policies, compared to the rest of the countries that the project targets. So in the case of Portugal, the stakeholders that came here were already very well versed. Some of them had had already policies. So the issues may have been different than in other countries. So they actually discussed further the discussion of how better to implement policies or to maybe revive policies, or how the new policies to be developed can and should be related to evaluation as an effective way of increasing access to research. At the same time, in Spain, where we know that there's also a number of policies compared to other countries, state policies also. For instance, you have the autonomous communities policies, you have a law in Spain about open access, and in this way, this country is well advanced overall. In Europe, they came together to discuss implementation and how different types of policies have worked. And also in Spain, we also have noticed that the publishers have been very active in participating in discussions. In Turkey, it was yet a different situation because the project and the national workshop gave the opportunity for the first ever really big meeting of about 200 delegates to discuss open access, and basically those were mostly from university, but it was very interesting because all of them worked together and drafted a declaration, and actually I think it was both MedOANET and Open Air Plus projects, and this has also I think been an achievement of MedOANET and Open Air project to work together very well. So they drafted a declaration that was submitted to the Higher Education Council, the Inter-Universities Council, TÜBİTAK, which is the funder, the Ministry of Science, Industry and Technology, etc. So we consider this that for Turkey is a very major development and certainly will be followed up by the project and beyond. In France, in November, universities, research institutions, libraries, and the French Research Ministry came together, and actually they had 3 parallel workshops discussing how to implement in the country the recommendations of the European Commission and how best to make the task force develop through the project work within it and beyond it. And this means was found through the digital science library infrastructure that will help build on this cradle of people and institutions and further the work in the future as well. In Athens, we had in December the first ever event that was explicitly held to discuss policies very specifically, and a roundtable into which we managed to bring together our national funder, with whom we've actually intensified a lot our connections through the project, and this is really, really good because they are very willing and moving forward with developing policies, and we consider that we have put our little keystone there into that through the project. Academic libraries link representatives of researchers. We had the Open Air project there as well. The collaboration with Healing is actually very important because they have a close connections to the universities, so through them we're able to reach the rectors' conferences and the universities. And so this was a stepping stone in Greece actually for further joint action in the country. The group acknowledged the need for joint action, and this will be followed up on and has jump-started national policy development process. In Italy, even more interesting, I think, the national workshop that was held only last week or 2 weeks ago was hosting by the, what is the CNR, Paola? Is the National Research Council, yes, with the conference rectors, and through our partners' mediations, a position paper will be signed by CRUI, the Conference of Rectors, and the research centers, and a roadmap to be defined for the implementation of the AC recommendations. And further connections and advising will take place through the project to the Ministry of Research. So this is really, really very significant, I think. Now, moving on from what's going on to the countries, to the separate countries, regional coordination is also one of the goals of the project, and this is achieved in various ways, namely through a strong interaction and information flow between our partners in the countries, the exchange of experiences, best practices, project meetings, and also through the strong interaction between this and other initiatives. And I think that today's seminar and the entire University of Minho workshop is an excellent opportunity to bring together people that sometimes may not find themselves together in the same table, to have a comprehensive picture regarding open access, policies, infrastructure, all of it together. And so then we are also planning to announce in more detail, actually to present in more detail the results of our projects and bring together stakeholders at the European level with the final conference of the project. And please do save the date. We haven't said this before publicly. Athens, 16th and 17th of October. There will be a guided tour to the Acropolis Museum. We're looking forward to seeing everyone there. I think overall, if I wanted to summarize the overall outcomes of the project, I think that thus far, in 1 year plus a little, it has successfully drawn the attention and steered actions in many cases at the policy level. Also, I think taking advantage at the same time in arguing the recent developments in policy, and namely the EC recommendation and communications on scientific information and access and the ERA this summer. And this is very significant because this argument has been used and will continue to be used for promoting open access and enabling open access policies, aligned policies in the various countries, in view especially of Horizon 2020. Some other things that we're planning for the future and before the final conference, obviously, that we've programmed in is guidelines for policymakers, and this will stem out of best practices per the project as they've been mapped by the project, and of course taking into account already existing policies, but they will be prepared in such a way as to be able succinctly and clearly to help policymakers in these 6 countries, and also will be translated in all 6 languages. And I think also, of course, it's an achievement that we have developed and built a network of organizations who are committed. They are centers of expertise, and they're committed to working for the promotion of open access policies in the 6 countries and beyond, now and in the future, and forging very close synergies to other centers of expertise that will promote the same concept and cause. And also the fact that each of us works in a different country and is a center of expertise in that country and is allied to other such centers of expertise in their country, I think will help us maintain the work of engaged stakeholders in each of the countries, and to keep on the discussion and enable further the developments at the national level. And that's it so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria.